to set the narrative, to set the premise, and also to come to some kind of a conclusion. I will start this segment of the Inclusive Human-Centric Summit with a panel discussion titled Vulnerable Leadership, the Courage to be Human. I think we are diving deep and straight into the topic at hand today in terms of the theme that we have set for this summit. And while we are setting down this panel to talk about what vulnerable leadership looks like, what does it comprise, but change is harder to come than what we would expect. The dictatorial, strict, and sometimes aggressive leader has solely transformed into a distant dictatorial one, and to the present day maybe a very collaborative, jovial, and approachable leader. But after all this hard work, we have to go one step further by suggesting that the future fluent leader also needs to exhibit vulnerability. What is this vulnerability? How easy or difficult is it to access? And what are the steps that we are going to take together to ensure we have a very human-centered leader in our midst is what we will discuss here on the stage today. For this panel discussion, I would like to invite on stage Binila Subbaji, Head Customer Operations BP, Bhavna Batraji, VP People S&P Global, Anil Gupta ji, Head Finance M&G, and Gayatri Sharma ji, Vice President Communications and Community, APAC Rolls-Royce. Holding this discussion together will be Dr. Akshay Kumar, Director, Ask Insights. Vulnerability at the top in leadership positions. Akshay, let's have a crazy discussion on the stage now. Over to you and over to our lovely panelists. Welcome on the stage.
Thank you so much. So what I'll do is I'll just quick start the panel very quickly, and thank you for coming back after this very engaging and very interesting session by Sister B.K. Shivani. Very big shoes to fill now, and we've been given that responsibility to set the context after her. So what I'll do is I'll quickly introduce the panel, and then I'll just leave it to the panel members to introduce themselves. Soumya has already done that, but if they want to elaborate on that, please go ahead. So this panel is on vulnerability, which is the first alphabet in views. Now, vulnerability can be seen from two lenses. One is vulnerable leadership, how a powerful leader can also be vulnerable, getting into a very strong combination of power and vulnerability at the same time, and also looking after the vulnerable population in your organization, right? So we can just elaborate on these two themes, and whichever you think is most important for you. And as Brené Brown, who's a seminal leader in the field of vulnerable leadership, says, vulnerability sounds like truth and feels like courage. Truth and courage aren't always comfortable, but they are never weaknesses. So on that note, let me start this discussion with you, Anil, and then we can probably take it ahead. And not in any order, because on my list your name is first, not being gender biased at all. So what do you think? Why has this conversation on vulnerability caught up recently? I mean, we didn't hear about vulnerable leadership about 5 years ago, and now it's everywhere. Why do you think? Why now, and why is it important?
Yeah. So firstly, Dr. Akshay, thank you for having me over for this fantastic event. It's been great so far, and really a fantastic step in collective learning. So there are multiple things that are at play out here, right? So first and foremost, if you look at our current workforce, it's multi-generational.
Right.
While it's always been multi-generational, but if you see the kind of complexities that we have to manage, Sister Shivani spoke about landline days. I'm one of those. And if I look at the way I've got two teenage boys, the meme and the emoji generation, it's very difficult to relate to them, right? But which is already happening at workplace, multi-generational, millennials, Gen X, Gen Zs, all working together. The other thing that has happened is post-COVID, the whole concept of hybrid working has really taken off, right? So in this day and age, it's extremely important not only to connect with your workforce, but connect very quickly. And one of the ways to connect very quickly is to build trust with the leadership. And that can only happen when people start seeing their leaders as human, not as some Superman or some Superwoman. The other thing that is happening obviously at workplaces, we as leaders ourselves are getting assessed and measured on scores like care, how much employees are feeling able to bring their true selves to work, their ability to speak up, right, that psychological safety. So when we are measured against those metrics, our results are out in the open.
Yeah.
So that those three things I think are clearly making itself extremely important in terms of having this conversation in today's age.
Yeah, thank you for that. So when you say that you're getting assessed all the time, can I just say that you are under fire all the time?
Well, it is, but it's part of the job is all I can
so
say.
let's connect that dot with you, Bhavna. When you're getting, he says that we are getting assessed all the time. So are we doing this just because we're getting assessed all the time and because we need to look good in front of people, or, is it the need of the hour?
I think it's an interesting question, and I'm going to address it, but maybe in a minute from now. Let me share with you an interesting study, and some of you may have read this. Earlier in the year, there was the World Government Summit that happened, and as part of that, in partnership with Gallup, there was a research that was published. It spoke about what people want from their leaders. So let me ask you as the audience, any guesses on what was number one on that list? What do people want from their leaders? What are we looking for from our leaders? Any thoughts? Honesty, okay. Empathy, support, sorry, guidance, respect, a good listener, trust. Very interesting and all very, very pertinent. But the number one thing that actually emerged that people are looking at from their leaders is hope. When you look around you, when you look at everything that is happening in the world today, there is so much that is happening, right? And it doesn't matter what you do for a living, it touches you irrespective, right? I think part of it is about looking good and, never underestimate the power of looking good. But I think more than anything else today, there is a real need that is being felt for authentic human connection. Because authentic human connection is what is helping us tide over things when we're not sure of quite how to tide over them, right? And that's why this conversation on vulnerability is more crucial today and more relevant at a leadership level than ever before.
Thank you, Bhavna. And this wasn't in my script, but very well said, and this study about hope. So I am a professor. I've been a professor all my life. I was a tenured professor at the University of East London, and I'm still a visiting professor at the London Business School. So I do a lot of research besides my consulting work with organizations as well. So there was this research that I did on depression, and probably, as you know, long ago, the number one symptom for depression is hopelessness. This experiment was done by Martin Seligman on dogs, and then dogs gave up trying to escape a particular place when they couldn't escape it after a while, and that's called as hopelessness, right? And then I developed a clinical therapy, and the first thing towards the treatment or to get over depression, clinical depression I'm talking about, on that therapy was to instill hope in a person. So yes, and that's, two things going along. Thank you for complimenting that research that I was doing. It was, presented at the American Psychological Association as well. So building on that hope, Benila, what do you think can be the next step after hope? So yeah, we instill hope, it is important. And then what? Why vulnerability? Why is it important?
So I think, apart from what she said, why vulnerability is important in today's day and age is because the workforce is changing, right? We have a lot more Gen Zs entering the workforce, and what that means is that they expect their leaders to be more open and more authentic and honest, and that's what they expect. And I think if we lead with the same old command and control style, I don't think it's going to work, right? I can share my own example. being someone who looks like me, having entered the workforce, about 20, 25 years ago, that was a novelty. And especially being in a leadership position, I had to lead with command and control at that point of time, because for me it was all about proving myself, delivering, getting things done. But then as time went, and I think leadership styles have changed, and I had to change and evolve with that and become more authentic, more vulnerable. And I think that really changed the way that my engagement with my teams and the outcomes that we were able to deliver really, really went through a massive, change, right? And I think that has been one of the most, powerful and empowering journeys for me. And I think how it will change the workforce in the future is essentially, I think if we create a psychologically safe environment for our teams, it will, create more innovation, because people will be more free to share their opinions, their ideas. I think we'll become a more resilient and adaptable, workforce, right, an organization, because we create an openness with failure, right? So people are more accepting of failure, and if we call things out very quickly, we're able to even fix whatever is broken, right? And I think, like Sister Shivani said earlier in her speech, that emotional intelligence is going to be one of the key factors and key leadership skills that each one of us have to have. So I think that's what I think. And I think vulnerability is not a weakness. It's something that makes us human. And again, as Sister Shivani or Richa said, I think in her keynote speech, that AI is taking up intelligence. And I think, being human is the need for the next generation. So I think that's what I want to leave.
Thank you, Binala. Very, very powerful. And Gayatri, I'll just jump off the script because I'm getting very powerful messages here. And this is the need of the hour, and I think people would want to know that. So she was talking about intersectionality, right? And when people have different forms of diversity clubbed in one, then the journey becomes even tougher for them. And a leader, if they are having different components of intersectionality, starts showing vulnerability, do you think they would appear weak, or do you think that can become their strength?
Personally, I feel that, let me take a step back. And I think it's more important to also look at the fact that when you talk about the multi-generationality as well as the diversity of the workforce that we are today working with and we find ourselves dealing with, I think a lot of us in this room probably find ourselves talking to people who are probably our generation or before, and also the Gen Zs. So one thing which stands out for me is the personal resilience.
Yeah.
That factor is diminishing.
Correct.
And that is where I feel when you as a leader are able to be vulnerable, you're able to connect both upwards and downwards. Because it doesn't matter who they are or where they come from, what stage of life they may be or what life experiences they bring. If you're authentic in your vulnerability, and it's not at all easy because it really opens you up and it's scary. It could be something which, when you for the first time decide to be vulnerable and open, you're opening yourself up to so much, from insecurity to, to maybe feeling guilt, shame. It can be a multitude of things, for things that you now look back and say, I didn't do that right. I didn't get it right. I was wrong. I didn't behave right.
Yeah.
And being able to acknowledge that your behavior, because we all believe we are great, we're good people.
Yeah.
I want to believe I'm a good person, and I want that my children should be good people more than anything else.
Yeah.
So it makes you even more open and raw
Yeah.
when you are sharing.
Yeah.
But what it does when you do it authentically is people relate, people connect, and you win hearts, and I think that's such a great way to actually be able to lead.
Yeah. So picking on that, the professor in me always jumps out. And so I'll talk about this research by Professor Barbara Fredrickson, if you haven't heard of her. She is an evolutionary psychologist. A lot of you would be hearing this term for the first time. You probably would have heard of clinical psychologists, social psychologists, but there are evolutionary psychologists as well who say that it's not just the human body that has evolved over the millions of years, it's also the mind that has evolved over the millions of years. We've become much more intelligent. And she says, she's given a theory called as the broaden and build theory, and she says that our mind can only evolve if we are in a safe environment. And no rocket science. For example, if you are stranded in a jungle and there's a lion in front of you, you cannot solve a math puzzle at that time or compose a poem at that time. Your sympathetic nervous system would be activated, and the only thing that you can think about in that moment would be how to escape that lion, how to escape that danger, right? It's only when you're in a safe space you will be able to compose poetry, or you would be able to perform better in a corporate organization. And that's where it brings me to the point that when you are in a state of threat in your workplace, and people out there are not authentic, then productivity and creativity shuts down. And we can only progress and perform better if we are feeling psychologically safe, and we can only feel psychologically safe if we have vulnerable leaders who enable us and make it okay for us to be the way we are. But the point is, not all leaders do that. Why? So, Bhavna, to you. Why do you think, is there a multi-generational, people now want authenticity more and people back then didn't want it? Is it a Gen Z thing, or people always wanted it, it's just that the Gen Zs are asking for it loudly? What do you think?
Well, to begin with, I think Gen Z is getting a lot of credit. I'm a very proud millennial, and I think we did our bit of disruption as well in the world of work. But I think coming back to your question, there is a generational difference, right? My parents are baby boomers and very proud baby boomers, right? But you would have all heard of this phrase, a stiff upper lip. The crux of that is you were meant to go through everything with stoic calm, right? But strength does not mean perfection. Strength means the ability to acknowledge that this is a situation that is challenging me, I need help, and then going after it and getting it, right? Let me ask you this fun question. So this was something that stumped me also the first time I was asked it. What are the 3 most difficult words in the English language? What do human beings find it most difficult to say?
I'm sorry?
Sorry. I don't know. I don't know the answer. Please, sorry.
Okay.
Help.
Okay, to forgive. The 3 toughest words are, I don't know. Because when I say I don't know, the honest perception that is there is you've just handed over power, you've just handed over control, you've just acknowledged weakness. And I think the pivot that has happened is the pace at which evolution is happening, and every manner of evolution, the kind of and quantum of content that has gone onto the World Wide Web in the last 10 years is significantly more than the history of the World Wide Web before that, right? The pace at which businesses are evolving, geopolitics is changing, is frankly unparalleled. So in this kind of context, the ability for anybody to know it all is, well, it was never there. We used to maybe have fallacies that we could know it all, but no longer. In fact, there is research which shows that this is World Economic Forum research on what are the skills that will be critical in 2030. And it shows that in spite of the impact of AI, the skills that will remain most unchanged will be skills around human motor intelligence, right? That requires us to actually dive deeper into aspects of personality. It's about learning, it's about unlearning, it's about relearning. And therefore, what has happened with this multi-generational play in place is that different people process very differently. And therefore, leaders have had to flex styles a lot more. And by the way, I don't believe that a leader is at the top of the pyramid. An individual who's working way deep in the organization is also a leader if they influence an ecosystem. So to me, the definition of a leader is anybody who chooses to create influence in their ecosystem through their actions. And if you choose not to create that influence, then you're not a leader. It's not something that an organization bestows on you. You can get the title, you may still not have the leadership presence or impact that's there. So Akshay, just winding it up, I think what has happened is that multiple generations in the workforce have exaggerated the need for us to deal with situations differently, and that's where this conversation.
And is it also because a lot of new research is coming out around it? Probably that could also be the reasons. The research.
Awareness, sure.
Yeah, awareness. The research says that teams practicing vulnerability are 60% more likely to build team trust. At 25%, there's 25% increase in employee engagement and 30% boost in innovation, creativity, and 40% decrease in turnover. And apologies for reading it because these are numbers by McKinsey, Houghton International, University of Binghamton, etc. So and these are some tangible numbers which shows that vulnerability has a huge presence and a huge impact. But let's bring it to reality. Anil, what do you think? What has been the impact of your vulnerable leadership in your organization? Because I've known you since a while, and you've been in a workshop with me as well as a leader, sat through the entire day. That tells a lot about the organization. What do you think, being vulnerable, did that have some tangible impact in your organization?
Yeah, so obviously we do quarterly employee surveys in which we assess employees' feedback across various metrics. And that, of course, gives you how you are performing on elements like speak up, psychological safety. But while those are numbers, I mean, let me just make it a little bit more real for everyone, right? How do you see that playing out on a day-to-day basis? I had a situation on one of my directs who was going through a pretty challenging personal time because both his wife and his mother were fighting life-threatening disease at that point of time. And clearly, actions speak louder than words, right? While I would tell him, listen, take some time off, work from home, pause, slow down. He wasn't really doing that. And then I had to share my own personal story with him. I'm a cancer survivor. So when I was in my 30s, I was diagnosed with cancer. I was doing extremely well in my career. And at that point of time, it was very tough for someone to take a break from their career and say, I'm going to look after my personal well-being, right? Which is what Sister Shivani said, that if you're not compassionate towards yourself, you will not be compassionate to others around you. So that was a story which I did share with him. And I could clearly see, right, there was a moment of pause and reflection, but I could clearly see him taking a breath and saying, listen, if it's not uncommon for people to do that, let me do that as well. And then he did take a career break. Fortunately, his wife and his mother both have recovered well. And he's doing exceptionally well, right? So when people talk about challenging situations, they think of the leaders of having a linear career path. Right? Everything is hunky-dory for them, but it's not. Everyone's fighting their own battle. And when you make it real for them, I really appreciated the word that you spoke about, which is personal resilience, right? You are sharing these examples to show them how some of the personal resilience that you have demonstrated has helped you, so that you can share some of those best practices and hopefully others can learn and benefit from it as well.
Thank you, and let's applaud Anil for sharing his story and being vulnerable and showing what vulnerable leadership is all about right here. Thank you for that. Vinila, coming to you, what do you think now, like just taking the thread from him? If this is the impact right now and we can influence so many people, what do you think is the future of vulnerable leadership? How would it impact the organization in the future, not just today?
So I think I touched upon it in my previous answer, right? Like where I said that if leaders are vulnerable, I think it creates an environment which is safe, which encourages people to open up, share ideas, be more innovative and creative. So I think that's what vulnerable leadership really does. And I think it's a journey that all of us have to go through. I think it's a change for us as, leaders from the typical, again, I'll use the word command and control, that we also have to accept that, the workplace is changing, the workforce is changing, and we have to be okay to say that I don't know. right? Which I think is very difficult for a lot of us who have been brought up in that way where, not just organizations, but society was also, a more of command and control style, right? So I think that's what it is. And in terms of how it will work in the future, I think, basically it's about, how do we create different kind of workforces where we redefine power flows. We create open forums. I think we have to create more cross-functional teams where, like she said, being a leader is not about your position or your role title. It's more about what you bring to the table, what kind of contributions do you make, and how do you influence, no matter what your position, right? I think that is going to be the future of the workplace, right, which is more open. And I also want to share that, the other thing that is very important is I think psychological safety has to be institutionalized. In most workplaces nowadays, I think pulse surveys, where we look at employee engagement, etc., is becoming the norm. It's about, how do we measure that? But more importantly, how do we create systems within our organizations which encourage psychological safety, right? And I just want to share a few examples. In BP, we do this very well. We do a lot of listening lounges as leaders where we engage with all sections of our employees and we take regular feedback from them and also close the feedback loop, right? And that helps employees, come and speak to us and engage with us. And I know we give a lot of credit to Gen Zs, in terms of helping us change the organizational structures and workforce. But I think they do because, they've been brought up in a world where access, has become a norm. So I don't think they're afraid to speak up. I have more Gen Zs coming up to me and, speaking to me, asking me for advice or, even sharing their views and ideas. So I think, they do, they are changing the workplace. So I think that's what the future is going to be.
Thank you. So hashtag Gen Z. Gayatri, last question, and then we'll wind up because, there's always another side to the coin as well. So do you think, and probably, do you have any example where vulnerable leadership did not go the right way and probably somebody might face a challenge when they become too much vulnerable and then coming back to balance? And what's the right approach?
That's a really interesting one to think about, especially because I think vulnerability happens. It sometimes happens behind closed doors and sometimes it happens in the open with teams and cross-functional teams. So it is tricky, no doubt. I personally think one example that comes to my mind is a leader who was able to come out and talk about how he felt about, the direction that his own career path in the organization was taking, and how he felt a disconnect and how it was impacting him.
Yeah.
And as a leader talking about that with the rest of his team, it had mixed reactions.
Okay.
Because you're in a way saying the organization hasn't, you're saying the organization hasn't created the right balance of enabling environment and skills and resources for him to thrive or her to thrive. And you're also saying that something went wrong and I don't feel valued. And you're a leader saying that to your team.
Yeah.
Yes, it had mixed reactions.
Yeah.
But I think it was also important for people to, and I believe that a lot of people would have gone back and thought about it and said, maybe I can speak up too. And one thing I really want to talk about is, we're talking about a lot of surveys of employees. One of the questions which is, usually in these surveys is, do you believe that something will be done as a result of this survey? Very mixed reactions come out of those.
Yeah, I've heard that.
You never get top scores on that question. And I think that is such an important thing. And so for me, when we look at the future, I think vulnerability is about redefining, because we talk about leadership and followership. So if you want people to follow you, you need to create connections in a very different way in the world that we are in today and the world that we are going to be leading in tomorrow. So when you build those connects, you will find people more willing to follow and more willing to walk the path with you when you show them the vision of the organization.
Yeah.
So I think that's what I would.
And in the era of Instagram, who doesn't want followers? So thank you so much for that. And with that, I would want to give some time to the audience as well. If you have some questions, a couple of questions we can take from the audience. Soumya, how much time do we have? 3-4 minutes? 2 questions. So let's take 2 questions from the audience. If you have any from our eminent people who are sitting here, and then...
Yeah, I'm Jyotsna from BP, and I really thank all of you. It was a wonderful session, great insights. I just want to add on to that from my personal experience, as you said, connecting with people. So same practices we can follow in our personal life also, especially with your family, especially with the kids. See, your team is like, as Sister Shivani said, be like a parent in the organization. So similarly, be like a parent to your children. You should not talk down to them. Talk with them and let them talk back to you with a limited discipline, but it really helps. That's all I wanted to add. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes,
think-
Bhavna has a thought on that.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to add to that. I think, all this talk about vulnerability, being authentic, etc. I think we need to have some guardrails around that. I think authenticity needs to come with accountability, and trust needs to come with also, the responsibility, right? Because if we don't have those guardrails, then it can lead to a lot of chaos, in organizations with people just speaking up but not taking accountability. So I thought I'll just add that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have-
The piece that I wanted to add was that, we use the term manager because the manager of a team is meant to manage performance. It's a very limited term. The reason why I prefer the term people leader is because then there is 360 accountability. But please also appreciate organizations are organizations. They are not families. Nor do we want them to be families. We want care, compassion, authenticity, and trust. But there is a difference between organizations and families, and we need to respect that difference as well. While it is important to create trust, it is also important to drive performance. Just very personally, my mother is certainly not interested in my upskilling. For her, I'm perfect the way I am. I was perfect and I will remain perfect. But for my manager or my people leader, if my upskilling is not a priority, then they are not doing their job. And we have to appreciate that difference.
Thank you. And for those whose mothers are their bosses like me, they are interested in upskilling too.
Akshay, we have a question right here at the
Yes.
back.
Yes, please.
Hi, this is Gayatri. I'm from PepsiCo India, and my question is specifically to Gayatri. You talked about, leaders demonstrating vulnerability, right? Oftentimes, leaders have leaders, okay? And a lot of times, when I've had my one-on-one conversations with multiple leaders that I've worked in my career, they also go into a mode of self-reflection where they're worried how they are seen by their superiors. Okay, so where do you strike the balance? Because you need to be authentic, you need to be vulnerable, you also need to be accepted. You want your team to talk back to you because they see that authenticity in you. Where do you draw the line, and how does one seek that validation from those above you and those who are working with you in the team?
Thank you so much. I think great question, but it goes back to, the fact, like I said before, that we as a generation have a bigger challenge working with people above and people below who have different mindsets, who come with different, upbringing in terms of professional upbringing, and how they've grown as leaders, which makes it such a difficult, actually the drawing of the lines and being careful about what's right, how much, how far you go, etc. But the truth is also that somewhere we have to be bold and know that if you do the right thing, even the people above you who may not conform to the same thought process or the same style of leadership will have to acknowledge that you were doing the right thing. I find that when I've done that and in closed doors with a boss who was very, very orthodox in his mindset or her mindset, I've had those conversations and they've come back and said, that's not how I would have done it, or that's not how I would have dealt with that person or that team. But they understand that the outcomes worked and what you did was right for the organization and for the people. So when you have been able to do that with conviction and doing the right thing at all times, I think you will find that you can be bold. And even those leaders who don't conform to the same thought process that you're bringing to the table will, even if they don't adopt your way of thinking, will have to acknowledge that you've done a great job. So I think that's my take on that.
Thank you,
Yeah, and
Gayatri.
if I-
Thank you. Like all of us are doing the right thing by being...
No, sorry, I was just going to add to what Gayatri said, right? Essentially, see, at the end of the day, results matter, performance matter, right? And if I look at the survey results across the various teams that I manage, the team that has the highest engagement score, highest psychological safety, are the places where the retention rates are the best. The most amount of innovation is happening, right? So at the end of the day, the ROI is very well justified by having that vulnerable leadership and really having a psychological safety environment around you in which people operate.
Thank you, and a very, very good note to end this entire conversation. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here and enlightening all of us. And thank you, audience, for having the questions. Thank you so much.
And thank you, Akshay, for holding the conversation together. I request all our panelists to stay there on the stage with us just for a bit. May we have the felicitation gifts for the panelists onto the stage, please. Akshay, may I request you to present these tokens of our gratitude to each of the panelists? Nahin. Binila Subaji, Head Customer Operations, VP. A token of gratitude from us to you. Bhavna Batra ji, VP People, S&P Global. Ma'am, we'll do a group. Anil Gupta ji, Head Finance, M&G. And of course, Gayatri Sharma ji, Vice President, Communications and Community, APAC, Rolls-Royce. Akshay was asking me कि उनको gift नहीं मिलेगा sir, but आपको मौका मिलेगा for having a nice picture with the entire panel. May I request you all to come a picture. While that happens, you can come and set up. We are waiting for our chief guest now to join us. Kindly stay with us for the next segment, which is again going to be very special, very inspiring. And just give us 2 minutes to set up the stage in anticipation of their arrival.